Greetings, everyone. My name is Emily Louie, and on behalf of Campbell and Company, I would like to welcome you to our third webinar in our three-part Auditing Your Online Fundraising webinar series. Today, our presenter, Lauren, will be focusing on social media, and will touch on creative content, social media ambassadors, fundraising integration, and more. Before we begin today's presentation, I'd like to quickly go through some logistics for those of you who may be new to our webinars. First, please close any programs other than the GoToWebinar that are running on your computer. Next, we recommend calling in with a telephone instead of using your computer speakers. And if you experience any visual issues, please send a chat to Campbell and Company or contact GoToWebinar at the number on your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded and will last 30 minutes. Within the next 24 hours, you'll receive an email from GoToWebinar that includes information on how to access the recording and download today's slides. Since today is a shorter webinar, we won't be taking live audience questions, but we do encourage you to email our presenter, Lauren, with any questions you have. We'll be sharing contact information before we conclude today. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our presenter today, fundraising consultant, Lauren Collette.
Great. Thank you, Emily, and welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Yes, as Emily mentioned, this is the third in our three-part series about auditing online fundraising. The first covered website and donation pages, and the second covered email. And so now it's time for social media. So again, my name is Lauren Collette, and I am a fundraising consultant at Campbell and Company. I've been with the firm for 4 years now, located in our Seattle office. And prior to Campbell, I was a frontline fundraiser in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. Part of my role at the museum was to manage online fundraising efforts. And since then, I've really explored this area as an interest. I just think there's so much growing potential for nonprofit organizations, both for giving and increasing awareness and engagement. And more importantly, it's an area that's always changing and adapting thanks to technology. And so I think we're all still learning with each other and from each other, and I find that extremely exciting. So in today's half-hour session, I'm going to be covering and opening with some data on social media for fundraising, just to provide some context and a quick overview of social media channels. Then I'm going to share why your organization should and how you can leverage social media for fundraising. We're going to talk a lot about content strategy, which is key to engaging your online audiences, and we'll conclude just by touching on metrics and benchmarking. So I always like to start by providing some data for context. It really does help answer the question, why is social media important for fundraising efforts? So as you can see on the screen, 29% of online donors say that social media is the communication tool that most inspires them to give. And social media drives 57% of traffic to fundraising campaign pages. Approximately 60% of mobile traffic comes from social media referral sources. M&R reported in 2019 that Facebook giving generated 3.5% of all online fundraising revenue for nonprofits in that year. And overall, revenue raised on Facebook increased by 6% over the previous year. More than 85% of donors who first donated from a social media source made their second donation also from a source. And of course, for peer-to-peer campaigns or registration with fundraising events, especially in 2020's context of virtual fundraising and virtual events, social media is a really strong driver. So what this slide here shows is that social media is really critical to building awareness and engagement with your audiences online, which then you hope will convert into action. And of course, part of that action being fundraising for the organization. So in case you're just starting out, I always want to do a quick overview just in terms of what's known as the big three social media channels. And I don't think these icons will be a surprise on your screen right now. So first we have Twitter. Millions of people use Twitter to connect to their world really easily, quickly, in 140 characters or less. It's really widely used for fundraising because it is Giving Tuesday's home, and it's where the movement really got its start. And it's providing organizations with a way to capitalize on trending campaigns and using hashtags to broaden their reach and garner more impressions than they would have otherwise. Second is Facebook. So we typically consider Facebook, not surprisingly, it's the foundation of nonprofit social programs. It has the widest, most diverse audience, and it's a really highly effective place to engage your constituencies. It's a little less rapid fire in real time than Twitter, but posts can be much more in-depth and story-like. And then third but not least is Instagram. This is picture, it's video driven. It's a really great place for user generated content. So for example, it's a place to share images and videos submitted by your audiences, or to host like takeover days from alumni in your stories and others members of your community. And of course, these three may be the big three, but they're not the only ones out there. YouTube is great for videos. LinkedIn's a really important avenue for thought leadership. And of course, we have Snapchat and newly important TikTok, which are options for of the moment videos and memes. We do recommend that organizations maintain an active presence on at least 2 different social media channels, which I'll talk more here in a moment about. So now we're going to dive into the fundamentals of how to leverage social media for fundraising. So here on the screen, you see a comic. I really love this comic. And it shows 2 people sitting across from each other at a desk. One is wearing a suit, seems to be the supervisor. And the supervisor saying, so what's the big campaign idea? And the employee replies, we're going digital, Facebook, YouTube, a mobile app, Pinterest. And the supervisor asks, well, what are we going to do with all those channels? And the employee says, I don't know, we're going to figure it out later. And so this is basically what we're trying not to do. This is what we're trying to avoid, being on social for the sake of being on social. As with all of your outreach for fundraising and communications, your social media content should be driven by a strategy, and that strategy should also align with your online fundraising plan. So this slide is just speaking of an online fundraising plan. If you take nothing else away today, just please remember to consider the full online experience, because social media doesn't exist in a vacuum. Here on the screen, you see essentially a pie chart graphic divided into 6 sections. You have email communications, mobile optimization, social media, payment options, stewardship, and website and donation page design. These are some of the major elements you should consider when making enhancements to your online giving experience. Of course, I could spend hours breaking down each of these. Some of my colleagues have focused on email and website and donation page, but each of these really impact and rely on each other, kind of like knocking down one dominoes. It impacts the rest of them. And so social media is a really critical piece of this pie. So at Campbell and Company, we typically look for 3 things when we assess a nonprofit social media usage. It's an active presence, compelling content, and an expanding community. I'm going to break down each of these, but at a really high level, we're looking to basically see if you have a robust presence on 2 or more social media sites that's driven by a calendar of some sort, and whether you're leveraging any tools to help you schedule posts and monitor activity. We're also checking to make sure that your posts are a mix and they reflect a variety of testimonials, stories, relevant news, and that they aren't overly promotional. They should be incorporating hashtags and visuals, and ideally some type of thematic organization. And lastly, we're looking at the extent to which you're using other channels, contests and giveaways, and/or a defined online ambassador program to build your following. So now I'm going to break down these 3 things in greater detail. So first, we're going to focus on an active presence. So you're going to want to establish a set schedule for posting new content and to create a plan to build up to daily posts. Our recommendation is to post at least once a day on Facebook and more frequently on Twitter if possible. You can definitely post a little less frequently on Instagram, but should still put up some new content multiple times a week. And I know this can seem daunting if you're just starting out, but you can do things like dedicating 1 or more days per week to a predetermined theme or topic, or even brand it with its own hashtag. For example, you may have Inside Innovation posts 1 day a week, or Weekend Warriors on Saturday or Sunday. You can also consider your organization's event schedule and use events to collect videos and photos that can be shared after the fact in bite-sized chunks. We really urge you to repurpose content as much as possible. You're also going to want to maintain a detailed social media calendar in Excel or in a content tool like Sprout Social or Hootsuite. In addition to the calendar of posts to be scheduled, you can also think about creating like a broader content idea bank that can be shared with other teams who may have different ideas for posts or maybe even access to media that you don't. It really is a gift like to have ideation and collaboration across teams at your organization, and this can be as simple as a Google white paper and doc that all members have access to. Our recommendation is to plan at least a month in advance. And what we mean by this is that you should be mapping out themes, links, photos, videos well in advance. You don't necessarily need to write all of your content that far in advance, but you want to have an idea about what you're posting so that you can leave yourself time to locate or really just kind of request any media you may need. You can run posts by anyone you want to feature, and you can share with colleagues as appropriate just to make sure you have organization-wide communications in sync. And finally, you really want to work towards a differentiated strategy for each platform. This means you're not just writing one post and then automatically cross-pasting it into other channels. The channels do have unique strategies, and you want to be thoughtful about what each channel works best for and who your audiences are on them, and then tailor your content accordingly. So next, we're going to touch on compelling content and how to create that. First, I kind of encourage you, don't fall into the trap of thinking that only your younger audiences are engaging with you on social. Facebook is a really good example of this, and while it is very popular among millennials and Gen Xers, a 2019 study from Pew Research Center showed that seniors are the fastest growing demographic on this platform, with the number of Americans over 50 who are joining the platform at a more than doubling rate since 2012. So this might look different for your organization, but our advice is just don't assume anything about your audience until you've studied or tested it. And the best way to learn what your audiences are interested in is just to review your social media posts on a regular basis. And our starting recommendation is monthly. So you want to investigate what content and formats are most likely to appeal to and really kind of spur and engage activity among your followers. So a reminder that the goal is not the number of followers, although that's really important to increase. It's about the engagement of those followers. So you see on the screen here a simple formula to calculate engagement for each post, and it's the sum of all likes, comments, and shares divided by the total reach of the post. And reach is the total unique number of people who see your content. Those metrics live in your Facebook analytics data. There is a spreadsheet you can download whenever you like that allows you to look at in-depth data on all of your activity. So the data is there for you to use and to find. You just have to go grab it. And then third, we want to talk about expanding your community. So let's say you have an active presence, you have compelling content. Now you want to focus on this third piece. So we already talked about one thing that will help expanding your audience, and that is increasing the frequency of your posts. So this is going to help you become more visible in your followers' feeds, which should build engagement and hopefully attract interest from other individuals in those followers' networks who can also then be reading, learning, and sharing your content. You also want to make sure to plug your social media pages in all e-newsletters and other email communications. And you definitely want to think about sending a welcome email to all new donors or subscribers and invite them to follow you on social channels and give them those links. You might even consider periodically offering incentives to your audiences to like or follow you on different channels. So for example, you could enter all new followers within a certain time period into a raffle for some swag or maybe a discounted program or event. These pushes we find are really helpful, especially before a major campaign that includes a social element, like an organization's Giving Day or Giving Tuesday, for example. And then last but not least, and I'm going to spend a moment here speaking to this final bullet, is just determining if you can leverage social media ambassadors to share content for you. This is really the same concept as peer-to-peer fundraising that we speak of so often, and it's tried and true and it works. So this just ties into the idea that peer influence is a powerful tool. So what social media ambassadors are is they are a group of people, or just sometimes a handful, who you're asking to share, retweet, and push social media content to their networks for you. Ambassadors can really be anyone and anywhere. And so depending on how you want to influence your audience, you can tap into different segments. So you kind of have the tip of the iceberg of VIPs or celebrities. You may have locally recognized names. And then you also have everyday people who are tied to your organization. In terms of what makes a great ambassador, think about anyone who's a current supporter, so board members, those who give annually, longtime volunteers. They obviously want to have an interest in your organization, so a passion for it. They regularly attend events or perhaps are active online and engaging with you there. You want them to have a large social media network. That's not a total surprise. This is helpful so they can push out content to the largest number of people. So perhaps this person is a local CEO or a leader, serves on multiple boards. Perhaps they have a well-trafficked blog, or maybe they're just popular in terms of a speaking circuit. And again, someone who has a really strong social media presence, knows how to use it, feels comfortable when you say, hey, can you tweet this for us? And they say, absolutely, just send it my way. So something I did at the museum at my previous job in DC, people there obviously love to network and have really large social media networks. And so I asked 5 members of my mid-level group to really essentially be my ambassadors. So I would ask them to push out content. So example, post or share during leading up to a special giving day, if a matching challenge was presented, or just a really fun and unique program invite to help bring people into our universe, to help broaden awareness. And it's also just a really great engagement for those you're asking to do this too. It's a cultivation step in fundraising. They feel like insiders that are part of your organization and they're helping you do really good work. So something to think about here is if you've never done this before, starting small is perfectly okay. Ask a couple people to do this for you. Keep it loose and informal. But if you feel like you have more experience with this and time and resources, you can also consider a program for your ambassadors. It's just helpful to establish some structure and some routine. You can have an FAQ. You can create a Facebook page or an email group that they all belong to, so you can kind of blast out requests to them at one time or send them something on the social media channels. So all they have to do is push share or retweet. And if you want to chat more about this idea, again, my email's at the end of this presentation. I'm happy to do so. But again, leveraging peer-to-peer opportunities is just a really great time to take a little bit of the pressure off the organization and to get others involved in sharing content and news. So assuming you have the building blocks covered or you're working towards it, the question now is how do you use your social presence to drive fundraising? And we've all seen the rise of birthday fundraisers or other direct asks on Facebook, and Instagram's also rolled out a donate button too. But short of just actually asking donors to give on social media, which you may or may not want to do frequently, you can also leverage your social media channels in existing fundraising campaigns. So again, this goes back to multi-channel fundraising and incorporating it in different ways of fundraising you're already doing. So using your channels to amplify your mail and email appeals is really the top way to do this. You can time your social media channels and appeals to be the same time as your larger appeals, and then when they go out in mail or they're sent via email. And you can also further spotlight testimonials from direct appeals. So if you have a letter or an email signer who shares part of their personal story or they're featured, you can also capture a quick video of them and use Facebook or Instagram to put the face to the name. Another thing I mentioned earlier, and you definitely want to consider, and we always emphasize, is just don't forget to repurpose content. Just like you can use email to share a highly produced event video with a broader audience, you can take that same video, break it up into 30-second kind of clips, and then share on your social media channels over a series of days or weeks to give yourself more content. You can consider hosting or participating in an online giving day. Of course, we know social is very important for Giving Tuesday and doing this. And you can also encourage your supporters to share their gift with their peers. So you can invite donors to post about their choice to support your organization on various channels each time they make an online donation. So I'm going to touch here just for a moment on even more content strategy because it's such a critical component to engaging with your audience. So here we have, again, the importance of data and numbers. So visuals are really high performers on social media. As you see on the screen, when compared to other type of content, visuals 40 times more likely to get shared on social. There's something called the 80-20 rule, meaning that 80% of posts should be impact-related content. So it educates, it entertains, it features your program, your people, and your staff and your board and so forth. And the other 20% can be promotional. So asking for a gift, promoting a product, or sharing information and asking people to join or upgrade into a membership program. When in doubt, video generates the highest engagement. 50% of Americans who use Facebook watch at least one video a day. So use videos to tell your story. And last but not least, show that there's a person behind your social media accounts. Like and respond to comments. As a social media user, I notice when companies or organizations do this, and it generates conversation and more engagement because you think, wow, someone noticed me and replied. This is also just about meeting expectations. If someone asks a question, they're looking for it to be answered. And then last but not least, depending on the content in your organization's mission, it's okay and sometimes even refreshing to be funny and personable and show a personality behind your account. So some high-level tips and tricks, starting with the left side, working our way down. Only use social media for what you have resources to monitor and post to and reply to. If you don't have the staff or resources to monitor 5 channels, then don't do it. I think like with anything in life, it's better to manage 2 things well than 4 things not well. Put the most effort into platforms where you have the highest engagement. If you have 1/8 of the followers on LinkedIn than you do for Instagram, then lean in on Instagram. And lastly, keep your audience in mind. So what do people engage with? If you're, an obvious example is a zoo or aquarium, it's cute animals. But for whatever you do, take note of what content people are engaging with, whether it's short text, long text, videos, testimonials, and push more of that content. On the right side, what you see here is social media is a great place to share news relevant to your organization, promote your events. And if you're featured somewhere, push that content, hashtag it, let people see who else is recognizing you. You can also use social media to recognize, publicly thank supporters. If a big gift or a big grant comes in and they're willing, you have to ask, but ask if they're willing to let you share it. It's great to say thanks so much to X Foundation or X Corporation for your support of Y and Z. It always feels good to be recognized broadly. And of course, in terms of content, it's really important. Fundraising is about how you serve your mission, and we don't want to lose sight of that. And a good way to do that is through testimonials or stories. So be sure to feature enough of those as part of your content. So our final section here is on metrics and benchmarking. And knowing how to use social media is important, but so is knowing what data to look at and measure. So again, social media, really important to increase and broaden awareness and engage so that it creates action, again, leading to giving. And, when we talk about annual and major giving, there really are defined metrics we look at and I think are more commonly understood as what best practices are. But social media people, I would say broadly, still don't know what metrics are and what they should be measuring. So measurement, of course, is important. It helps us identify what needs improvement, what's working well, and when whoever, whether it's a fundraising person or someone on your Marcom team or otherwise, is managing your social media, it lets them know where to put their time and energy. So what we commonly see is, we hear, well, nonprofit X wants to use social media to raise awareness. And if that's your goal, it's just a little bit too broad. What does raising awareness really break down? How do you measure that? Is that more phone calls to your membership line? Is it website traffic? And another common goal is increased donations. Very worthwhile. And social media is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not a silver bullet for fundraising. And you may have heard the term vanity metrics. So vanity metrics often refer to the data that doesn't speak to or directly impact your overarching fundraising goals. So these metrics are easy to report, but are also distracting. If raising money on Facebook is your goal, then the number of likes is a vanity metric. The number of donations through Facebook is the meaningful metric to be tracking. So a few other metrics to think about. I spoke to engagement earlier, but again, engagement allows you to understand what your target audience is valuing. Conversion means that you may want to create some goals around social media. So leveraging it to generate donations, enlist volunteers, visit your blog, sign up for your e-newsletter, or so forth. And a conversion occurs when one of these goals is met through an online channel. Essentially, an action is taken. So what your social media reporting should be based on when and how often social media activity is creating a conversion. You can track this free through Google Analytics. And a really simple Google search can show you exactly how to do this for different channels. Email subscribers is something I always recommend because you always want to be growing your email list. So you can definitely be using social media to help towards that goal and measure how many email newsletter signups you received following a push through social media. And next is traffic to an interest in your website and, of course, your donation page. Many nonprofits aim to send their social media traffic to websites a measure as success. And so that's a really important one to look at as well. Last but certainly not least, because I see we are running up on time here, is that there's also a lot of value in benchmarking. And benchmarking, again, is just comparing one set of information to another set. And so you can do this first and foremost internally with yourself. So you can compare 1 year or 1 quarter or 1 month to a next. And if you don't have any metrics to start from, now's a really great place to start. So hint, hint. You want to choose your goal and the information to collect before picking variables to measure. So example, clicks to a donation page and so forth. What you see on the screen here is when you want to see your organization stack up against others, so external benchmarking. And our firm, and especially our online fundraising team, loves using M&R Benchmark. M&R is a really great resource in general for online fundraising. And they do an annual nonprofit benchmarking report, which is how they get this information and data. So you can go to this site and look at a variety of benchmarks metrics. So, what you can do is choose a social media metric for fundraising. For example, just one here that I highlighted is change in Twitter followers, and see where your organization stacks up. It also divides the data up by sector, which is amazing. And of course, we know variables exist like organization size, but it's just a helpful starting point to see on average where you fall with other organizations across the country. So what's great is that if on average nonprofits saw a 10% year-over-year growth on Twitter and your organization saw 2 or 3%, and that is something you want to grow, then you can zero in on that for a goal for next year, increase engagement through Twitter, and then to come up with tactical ideas to do so. And I know this is sometimes tricky because the fundraiser is not necessarily always the person at the organization who manages social media. We're really aware of that. But I encourage you to use benchmarking and work hand in hand with those who maybe do manage the social media, and just share this knowledge with your colleagues, the 80-20 rule. Use metrics like this and share with them how important those data points are in the beginning for why it is important to leverage social media for fundraising. So that brings us to the end of our lightning speed session. I know that was a lot of information, but I thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this webinar and you want to dig in deeper, you can check out our website and our YouTube channel for the other 2 parts of this series. So again, it was featuring on website and donation page as well as emails. And then you can also take our 6-minute survey to assess your organization's overall online fundraising efforts. It's a great way. It's a very simple, I think, like 10 to 15 question quiz, and it'll just let you know where you're falling in terms of what Campbell and Company finds and experiences as well. So again, if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to me. My email and my LinkedIn are on the page. I have so much fun talking about social media and online fundraising in general, and I just really thank you for tuning in, participating, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and week. Thanks so much, everyone.